Welcome to the You Need More Money podcast. I'm your host, Matt Manero, where I come to you every week from my studio in Dallas, Texas. And I am a very blessed man in so many ways, with my wife and my three boys, in my business that took so long to get off the ground and have success with, the people that I work with. But something that has happened in my life recently is, as this podcast has started and continued to grow, I'm able to connect with people who have been a part of my life and they didn't know it. My guest today is Hector LaMarque, and Hector has been a part of my life for the last 6 years, and Hector didn't know it either.
I did not.
And so through the podcast, I'm able to meet Hector. We have had conversations on social and on the phone, but this is a wonderful opportunity for us to contact, to be in connection with each other, and for me to actually get excited about something. It's a rare thing in business. I always say that it's really only in the movies where businessmen pop champagne when the deal is done, because in real business, the deal has been worked and reworked and rehashed so many times. It's been won and it's been lost that you don't even know when you're supposed to pop champagne. And when you do supposed to pop champagne, you're pretty much over the deal anyway, right? You're on to the next deal. But today is not the case, because Hector, I have been such a fan of you and your material for many years, but not just what I think from what most people would look at. I'm a fan because the evolution of your career and you as a person, I think, has given me confidence that I can continue to push and achieve. Because when I look at some of your early content, it reminds me so much of me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too long ago that I was still like that. the fire that you had in your belly to achieve, and the no excuse mindset, and I'm going to go so far as to say aggression, Hector, that you had. I know that probably isn't the right word for your life now,
assertive. You say assertive, very assertive.
It gave me, you gave me an opportunity to say it's okay to be me, and you didn't even know you were doing that. And so it's absolutely my pleasure to have you on the show.
Very glad to hear that.
So would you do me a favor, and let's take the audience back a little bit as we explore where that fire came from. You grew up in California. Walk us through some of your early memories at home, Hector.
Well, I grew up. I'm the fifth of 7 children. My father is a Mexican immigrant, and we came to this country with a 3rd grade education. I grew up in a 1,000 square foot home with 9 people in it. 5 of them women, with a bathroom the size of your telephone booth back there. So it was, we were lower, middle class, and but I had a great childhood. My parents were very hardworking people and really good people, but we never had anything. And but I have a very large extended Mexican Catholic family with, tons of aunts and uncles and cousins and all that. And one of the things is there was not one single person that ever went to college in my family, and not one financially successful person ever. And so for me, what allowed me to, break out of that situation was personal development. I mean, I became a personal development junkie, still am, even today. I never go a day without working on myself. And that allowed me to change, my entire life. And so I got, when I went to college, I have a degree in psychology and a minor in Spanish. And I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. And then I got married and had a baby right away, then had another one right away. And I was broke and I just needed a job. And I got into the retail jewelry business and right out of college. And I didn't know anything about selling. I had to, go buy it. I never even owned a tie before, or a suit coat or anything like that. So I went and used my wife's JCPenney's credit card, bought a couple of clip-on ties because I had no idea how to tie a tie, and shirts and stuff like that. And I started, I've always been a voracious reader. I read a lot. I've probably read well over 1,500 books on personal development over the last 40 years or so. And I started reading about sales. Frank Bencher's How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success, and maybe it was about 3 or 4 books that I read, and I just started implementing that material, and I did really well in the retail jewelry business right without having any experience in sales. And then I got recruited a few years later into Primerica, and that changed my entire life. I mean, I went from just making a living to becoming financially independent and relatively wealthy through Primerica. So that's kind of how I started. That's where I came from. And
but there is a competitive nature that had to have existed before your wife and your 2 children were in your life too. There had to have been something that said, I'm watching what's around me. I see the love. I care for these people, but there is an economic thing that I'm going to get my hands on. I'm going to get my piece of the American pie. When was that starting to form in your mind? Because that had to have been forming, maybe not in your mind, but in your body and your soul. That had to have been occurring before you started getting sales.
There was 2 kind of big events or moments in my life. One was when I was in high school. I played sports. I was an athlete. I played basketball, football, baseball, ran track, all that stuff. And I decided I wanted to play basketball. And when I first started, I was a sophomore. It was the first year I played, and I was on the B team, the reject team, because I had just started playing. And then the next year, I wanted to go out for the varsity, and the coach was asking everybody, what are you going to go for, junior varsity or varsity? And I said varsity, and all the kids started laughing at me like that was a joke. That could never happen. Well, you have two ways to react to that sort of thing. You can, say maybe they're right, I'm not good enough, or get pissed off like I did. And I started practicing like crazy, and ended up not only making it, but became the captain of the varsity basketball team my senior year. Went on and played college basketball. And so I learned something, that when you just really apply yourself, when you just dedicate yourself totally to a thing, you can move from nowhere to really to somewhere pretty special. And so when I started working, I started thinking about, that's when I started reading these personal self-development books, and I started thinking about, well, if these other people have made it, and not everybody was born with a silver spoon. As a matter of fact, over 80% of the people that are multimillionaires or millionaires today created that on their own. They didn't inherit it. They weren't lucky. They made it happen. And I discovered that through reading these, all this material. And I figured, well, if somebody else did it, I could do it. And then I started looking for an opportunity. Then I was looking for, how can I do this? So I tried a bunch of different things. Finally, I connected with Primerica, and it just was a perfect fit for me. And my first 5 years in the business, I started out part-time, and I made $18,000 my first year, $35,000 my second year, $86,000 my third year. In my fourth year, I made $409,000, and in my fifth year, I made $855,000, and that was in 1988. And from there, it just kept on growing. But I just found that, if you're really serious about doing something with your life, and you commit totally to making that happen, and you grow your skill sets and your knowledge base, anything's possible. The problem is very few people ever do that.
Yeah.
Very rare that anybody does the work. Everybody wants to be successful until they figure out how much energy and commitment it takes to make that happen.
You're so calm now when you say that, but in some of your early material, it's not so calm. I mean, your ability to get up in somebody's grill and really transfer the fire that's inside of you into them. And I know you're a huge fan of Jim Rohn, as I am as well. And,
Right.
Rohn was so early on that, the ability to get up in someone's why and begin to call it out of them. And I know that has to be an element of his material that you resonated with, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There's no question about that. I mean, I think I've always been very direct. So I'm a really direct person. If you watch some of the early YouTube videos that you're talking about, I was just really, really direct with people, and with the right people, that resonates, and people really connect to that sort of thing. The winners, the people that are really serious about being successful, they connect to that. And the people that are, get offended by that, they're not going to do anything anyway. There's no point in trying to, coerce them or baby them or, beg them to do that. I never did that. I never tried to, talk people into doing a thing. I just told them the truth, and truth wins.
But did you make the same mistake I did, which was just steamroll too many people and do it in the wrong environment? Or did you always have the self-discipline to handle the person in the right environment? Because I made that mistake for many years in my career.
No, I never had that problem. Thank God I had a father who had the most amazing people skills of just about anybody I've ever met. I watched him my whole life operate around people. And so I knew how to do that. So when you hear me from the stage, I was all fiery, I guess, if you want to call it that, and very direct. But one-on-one, I never did that to some guy. I always talked to the issue and never to the individual, to the person. I think it's important that when you talk to somebody and you want them to do better, you talk about the behavior and what they're doing and how it impacts where they want to go from a success standpoint. So I've always had very good. I think that's one of the reasons I've had a lot of success is I do have very good people skills, and people skills are super critical, because if people don't like you, they're not only not going to help you, they're going to sabotage you.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's really imperative to treat people with respect and to honor them.
Well, one of the things that that has begun to help me become better in that environment is really two things. Number one, I've adopted this theory a few years ago, which is praise in public, problem in private, and I won't deviate from that. And when I do make that mistake, I will be the first person to fall on the sword and apologize and say I broke one of my cardinal rules. But that, for anyone listening, whatever the person's version of that is, but the reality is praise as often as you can in public and only problem in private.
Absolutely. That's exactly the way that you need to do that. And even when you're doing it in private, the way that you do that in private is critical too. I mean, and like I said, I think it's important to point out what they're doing that's inhibiting their success track, and talk to that and let them see that that's what's preventing them from moving to the next level.
Well, how would you say that, Hector? If you don't mind, I'd love to give the audience a learning takeaway. What would you say to someone in your organization that was that tough message? How would you go about saying that? Maybe we can all learn from that.
Yeah, I have a guy in my business named Rick Susie. He's my number one guy. He's just amazing. And but when he's a really hard charging guy, probably a little bit like and a little bit negative in the beginning. I had an office and we had some younger guys there. He had his own office and there's a bullpen area, and he would be complaining about this or that. And finally, I took him into. I said, Rick, we'd have a talk, and brought him to my office. I said, listen, the business is difficult enough for these kids to try to get these things going, and for you being negative, they look up to you. You're their hero, and you're talking about things that really are negative, and you're affecting them in a negative way, and you need to stop doing that. So you either need to stop doing that, or you need to move out and open up your own office. Because this can't happen. It just can't happen anymore. And that's how I handled that. So I didn't tell him you're a jerk, you're an idiot. I didn't do that. I pointed out his behavior, how it was affecting those people, and how he had a choice. He could either stop doing that or he could move out. And he's a really very intelligent guy. So he figured that out and he stopped doing it, and his career just took off after that. He's had an amazing career as a result.
And people wanted to follow him after that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the second piece that I've learned over the last couple of years, which I think is making me a better leader and manager and business owner, is that I can't want it more than the other person.
Right.
And I know in your career you have to have been that person who said, if I can do it, you can do it. Why aren't you doing it?
Well, one of the things I think what it took me about 3 years to figure this out is that you cannot motivate people. I don't believe in motivation, really. I believe that there are people that are motivated, but to motivate somebody who's not motivated, it's kind of like trying to get an alcoholic to stop drinking if they don't want to stop drinking.
Right.
You can't do it. It's not possible, or whatever it happens to be. So I when I figured out that I couldn't really motivate people. But if I found motivated people with what I knew, the skills that I developed, the knowledge I've acquired, I could help them be successful. So what I started to do is just only work with motivated people. If they weren't motivated, I was nice to them. I'd say, hey, Matt, how you doing? How's your family? How the boys? Blah, blah, blah. But I would not spend any time or energy with those individuals. And when I found an individual that was motivated, I spent massive amount of time with them. I worked really hard to try to transfer all the skills that I had developed, the knowledge I'd acquired to those people, because those are the people that are going to move your organization. Those are the ones that are going to become leaders of leaders. And those are the ones that are going to excel. So I think and then what happened when I started doing that, the business came really fun for me, because I wasn't trying to motivate people and talk them into doing something. I just found the right people. It's, as you probably well know, it's really fun working with motivated people.
It is.
It's not only, it's energizing.
Yeah.
And we need that. We everyone thinks that the leader has all the motivation or excitement or energy, man. We feed off other people just as much as they feed off of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I assume that's a filter. That's a qualifying. I mean, did you? How would you go about creating opportunities that put these motivated people in front of you to be able to grow? I mean, right now you have over 14,000 people working underneath you in your network, and
Yes.
How does that even start? I mean, well, how is it, Hector, that I say to my business all the time, how is it that one person starts with one tow truck that we finance, and some end up with 100, and one starts with a tow truck and ends up with one tow truck? I mean, how do you even get your hands around the idea that you were able to build something that could blossom to what it became with Primerica?
Well, for me, it's I'm a big on visualization. I think that visualization is like in sports or anything in business as well. I was always, when I could see somebody doing something big, then I said, I could see myself doing that as well. I just pictured myself in that situation. So building that organization, I saw that before it happened. I was by myself when I didn't have anybody yet. I hadn't recruited a single individual yet, and I had nothing going on yet. I could see me being in that place, and I would visualize that every day, all the time. And I'm a big on goal setting and having them written down. What I would do is I would write down. I think most people don't really know what they want.
Yeah.
The guy that has one tow truck versus the guy that has 100. The one that has one doesn't really know what they want. That's one thing. People say, how do you stay motivated? I said, well, I always knew exactly what I wanted. I was crystal clear about how I wanted my life to develop, and where I wanted to live, and what kind of cars I wanted to drive, and how I wanted a vacation. I knew exactly the kind of life I wanted to have. I dreamt of having a life. You know how it is when you're on vacation? Vacations are awesome because you get up every day and you do exactly what you want. I like to golf. I like to golf early in the morning. Then after that, have a nice lunch with my family, and then maybe go to a early dinner, and then catch a movie after. That's like a perfect day for me. And I visualize having that life every day of my
Long before it happened.
Way before it happened. Yeah, before somebody would have thought I was crazy thinking about that. But that's how I developed my business, and I saw that, and I developed my business in such a way that I have, pretty massive cash flow, and I don't have to ever be anywhere. And I live my life 98% of the day at time, like as if I'm on vacation. Like right now I'm in Newport Beach. I have a place in Newport Beach, a place in LA, and a place in Scottsdale. And I live my life 90+% of the time as if I'm on vacation. And that is not an accident. I visualized that way before it happened.
So I think the reason that people don't do that is number one, we're afraid of success. People think that we're afraid of failure. I really don't believe that. I think most people are truly afraid of what happens if I do get what I want. And I also think they're afraid of being looked at as a dreamer, because in order for you to visualize that, you had to put the cart in front of the horse, and most people consider you to be a blowhard or a braggart of what you're going to do. So we clamp down and we stop telling anyone, and sometimes we then stop telling ourselves of what it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you really have big goals, it may not be a good idea to tell everybody about it and just to do it. And that's kind of what I didn't tell everybody about it. I just thought in my mind, I just went and did the work and made it happen. After I made it happen, I tell everybody that's what I did, but I didn't really talk about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I didn't really do that. I just knew how, what I wanted to accomplish. And then I did the work to make it happen.
You're a huge believer that goal setting without writing down goal setting is not goal setting. It's wishing.
Oh, absolutely. I just read this just the other day. There's a study that Harvard did on their graduates, and they found that 3% of graduates wrote down their goals, 13% thought about their goals, and the other rest of them didn't do anything, didn't have any goals. And then they looked at them 10 years later, and the ones that thought about their goals had made twice as much as the people that didn't, but the 3% that wrote them down, their incomes were 10 times more than all the rest of them. Yeah. And that's very powerful. So, if you don't write them down, it's a wish, not a goal. When they're written down, then now you actually have a goal and something to look at. And one of the things I did that I think could be helpful for people that I always did is I think you need to be thinking about your goals relentlessly. I mean, nonstop. So what I did is I wrote down a little synopsis of my goals, and I put one in my visor of my car. Yeah. I put it on the mirror where I got up in the morning. I put it in my Padfolio. I put it on my cell phone. I put it everywhere where I would see my goals many, many, many times a day. And I think, there you go, just like that. Just
laminated in my wallet.
There you go. Yeah. So I put it on my cell phone, on my sun visor. So everywhere I went, on my desk in my office. And so I'm seeing them all the time. I'm thinking about that, because what happens, people don't know what they want, and then they don't focus on it. And what you focus on relentlessly, you will create in your physical reality. You just will. Somehow the universe, or whatever you want to call it, will come and assist you in making those things happen. And I know that's true because it happened exactly for me. So when I want something to happen, all I do is I think about it nonstop. I focus on it, and somehow things start coming into my life. People come into my life. Things happen, and all of a sudden, voila, it happens. And it's happened to me over and over and over in my lifetime over the last 30 odd years I've been in business.
I think it helps define the path that the person should be walking down, because most people are walking down multiple paths all day long. And this, when you see it like that. But a challenge that I've had, Hector, with all frankness, is the goals that I set early were not big enough.
Yes.
And I worked my butt off to get to these levels, only to say, wow, I mean, I wasted a decade. I look at it and say, I wasted so much time just not thinking that I was worthy or could achieve more. Now that changed when the business got to $100 million. Everything changed. Right. Everything changed at that point. But God, I'm 48 years old. I think I could have done it at 38 years old.
You probably could have. Absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. I think most people think way, way too small. I think one of the problems where people feel like they're not worthy, for me, that's where I think personal development is so critical. I think the more you work on yourself, you start feeling like you deserve to be successful. I think most people don't work on themselves enough to feel that they warrant that success. And that's why I do it every day, because I want to keep feeling like, if I can make $1 million, why not 2 million? If I can make 2 million, why not 3 million? If I can make 3 million, why not 6 million? Why not? Mm-hmm. If you're doing the work and you're growing, you deserve to do that. And especially if you're offering something to society that's good, that's helpful, that makes a difference.
I'd like to talk about this concept, though, just quickly, Hector. Again, is it baked in the box? Is success baked in the box of someone, or can someone really turn around? In other words, can a zebra change their stripes from failure to success?
Well, I think everybody is capable of having significant success. The problem is most people aren't willing to do the things that success requires. I think one of the things that's helped me to help a lot of people become successful is I look at every individual as they can be successful. They can do something extraordinary if they're willing to do the work. And that's a big if, because most people just aren't. And that's okay. That's okay. So, but I think the fact that that I believe that everybody can, and I believe in everybody until they prove otherwise, has been a really big factor on, in my business in Primerica. I have more people making big money than any other organization in Primerica. I have more successful people than anybody. And I think that's one of the reasons, because I look at everybody that way. I see them that way. Now, they can prove otherwise, but from as far as I'm concerned, I know that at any point, if they want to turn it around, they can turn it around. They probably won't, but I know that they can. And having that belief, it moves people. It inspires people. When people know that you believe in them and they're motivated, they're apt to do much, much more than if you don't believe them. And people can feel, Matt, if you believe in them, or you're just being condescending to them. People can feel it.
Yeah, it's so important. It really is to enter it with genuineness all the way through your being. I mean, really, what you were saying a minute ago is so true, that there is this karmic energy that goes on in the universe. What you put out is what you receive, period.
Absolutely.
And I do think people need to trust in that a little bit more, because as I have begun to trust in that in the later days of my career, everything has gotten better for me.
Right, absolutely.
Versus all of us we feel like we have to be in this control center, right? Everything must be maneuvered and controlled and adjusted by our own puppeteering, right?
I think that's a big mistake people make, because people, my wife, she goes, "How do you do that?" I said, "I don't know. I just focus on it, and then somehow it happens. I'm very good at doing that." And I try to tell people that. People go, "Oh, that's just like mumbo jumbo." Well, it's not mumbo jumbo, because it's happened to me over and over, and it's happened to you. One of the reasons you've had so much success is because you're maniacally focused on making that business grow and making things happen. It's not an accident. You weren't lucky. You have a very, very focused mind on what you're trying to do, which is why you've succeeded. And everybody that succeeds, I use the analogy, like when you want to buy a new car, right? Have you noticed that when you want to buy a new car, all you can think about is that new car?
That's all you see is that.
And then when you're driving around, every time you come to a stop sign, you look at cars, and that's not an accident. That happens with everything. Yeah. Everything works that way. But the key is the relentless focus, and most people don't do that. They're in and out. They're kind of like most people. I say you have to be laser-like focused. It's kind of like a laser versus fluorescent lights. Fluorescent light is not a laser. It's just weak light going all over the place. Well, that kind of light doesn't have any power, but a laser has. Now they're making weapons. The government's making weapons with lasers, right, to destroy things. Well, the same thing can happen in your life. If you're laser-like focused, you can make things happen that you cannot do when you're a fluorescent light.
I don't think that can be stressed enough. I'd like to talk a little bit about the concept of sacrifice, because, look, when I started my business, I was 25 years old. I was not married. My wife and I were not even dating at the time. I was able to live in a dumpy woodbender apartment with a phone and a folding table to make this thing work. You did not have that luxury. I mean, you were married with 2 children even before you got into Primerica. So how were you able to structure the sacrifice and get your wife primarily to buy into the vision? Because a lot of people struggle with that. They want to commit, but the minute they go home, they're catching grief from their significant other.
Well, when I decided to quit I was in the retail-driven business, and this is back like 1979 to 1984, and I was making, when I left there, about $55,000 a year, which in today's dollars would be $100 and some thousand. And anyways, and I thought, when I told my wife I was going to quit, or actually I didn't even tell her, she found out because I told somebody else and they told her. She was really upset, and I just went, we had a conversation, and I got pretty heated, and I just said, "Look, I've always provided for you. If you don't believe in me, why the hell are you with me if you don't believe in me?" That's basically what I told her. I said, "I'm going to make this thing happen." And I think the biggest problem why spouses give the guy or the gal grief is because they're not delivering. They're not making it happen. They're not getting results. And I think you have to get results, because people see that you're serious, then they're going to get behind you. And so what happened is I started getting results. I started making money. Here's a check. Here's $1,000. Here's $1,500. And all of a sudden she goes, "Oh, wow, this really works." I said, "Yes, it works." And I think the biggest problem is you got to bring home the bacon, man. You got to get. to make things happen. They have to see that you're really dead serious about what you're trying to do, because if you're not, if they don't see that commitment, then they're going to opt for safety and security, which is a job, job just over broke. And so I think that's a big issue.
You're right, man. I mean, you got to explain your vision, and then you better take enough action to deliver on it, because that spouse, that significant other she's looking for you to start screwing up, right? To do the old "I told you so," but they get real quiet when you start bringing home the checks and proving, and then eventually it really does convert to a team atmosphere.
And then once I got her on board, and she said, okay, then what we did is we developed a 5-year game plan that we were going to dedicate every ounce of energy we had for 5 straight years. We're not going to take vacations. We're not going to look left or right. We're going to focus on building our business, and we did it together. That's how I went from making, like I mentioned, from 18,000 to 855 in 60 months. So but we did that as a team, and we still today. She's the CFO of our company. She oversees all of the the money and the taxes and all this. You know how complicated it gets when you start doing well, right?
Yeah.
She's amazing, and
boy, that was a lot of money. 855,000 in 1989. That was a lot of money. That was a lot of money.
Well, yeah, like if you look at what that is today, it's close to $2 million. Yeah.
Boy, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Did despair ever kick in for you? Did you ever say, I don't know if I can, if it's sustainable, I don't know if we can keep it up, or did that not really enter? You just said, how do we go to the next level? How do we go to the next level?
What I did is I realized a long time before this that if I just keep growing me, then, my income will keep growing. The right people will keep coming into my life. So I think that for me, the most important thing is just the personal growth. I think most people stop doing that. They don't really work on themselves. They start having success and they just think that they've got it. I think that if you have a commitment that you're gonna constantly improve yourself and grow yourself in every way possible that you need to be successful, whether it's time management, people skills, sales skills, leadership skills. There's so many areas that we could grow at. You will always feel like you can keep it going. And it will keep going.
It will keep going. It will, despite who's in the White House or what the economic conditions are or what regulation changes, it works. I'd love to play the money game with you, Hector, which is what I like to do on every episode, where, again, the primary takeaway is how do we help people make more money? Because everyone's chasing these false numbers. I mean, here we are talking about the numbers that you were earning in the late 1980s. Those numbers have obviously only exploded through the 90s and the 10s, and now we're in the teens, right? I mean, it's an unbelievable career of an accumulation of income.
Yeah.
But people are still chasing this $80,000 a year number that you're talking about from 1986, right? And like for me, when I graduated college in 1991, being the top 1% earners, you needed to make $100,000. Today, that number's $384,000.
Wow.
But lots of people are still chasing $100,000. So I want people to understand that the money has moved, and that in order to move with it, we've got to adjust our mindset, but we also have to understand that whatever number we're chasing is probably too low of a number.
Absolutely.
And so what would you say to someone, Hector, in their 20s? So a guy or gal, maybe they went to college, maybe they didn't go to college. They're getting going. They're looking for a roadmap. Maybe they're looking for a mentor. Maybe they're just saying, how do I get my hands on something that I can do with? What would be your suggestion to that person?
Well, what I tell people all the time, I says, I think I've never chased money. Actually, I've had money goals every year, no question about that. You should have a goal, but I've never chased money. I chased being great at what I do. I think when you're great at what you do, I mean, really great at what you do, money follows you. For example, if you look at LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, they were great. What happened? Became super wealthy. I mean, you look at I'm a golfer, like Spieth or Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson, all those people, what they have in common, they're great at what they do. Money chases them. And you look at the great actors, same thing. It doesn't matter what discipline, great doctors, great construction people, great at it, whatever you're doing. Yeah. If you focus on being great at what you do, money will follow you. You don't have to chase money. And so most people they're chasing money, but they're not growing themselves at the same time. And you need to be doing that. I think because what happens, you have to provide immense value to make big money. If you're not providing an immense value, then your money's not going to chase you. There's money's only an issue in the absence of value. The more value you create, in other words, what you offer people, whether it's from the thought process or whatever, product, process, whatever, it's what you offer people that differentiates you and allows you to make big money. So
I'd like to say the top 1% of any industry is a good place to be. I mean, using your golf example, it doesn't have to be Spieth. How about a caddy? How about the top 1% of caddies?
Yeah,
the money follows those guys too.
There's Bones McKay, who was caddy for, I know Bones. He's a member of a club I belong to in Scottsdale. I play golf with him occasionally. And he's made millions being a caddy. Because, Phil makes $50 million a year, and he helps him make that money. And he gets paid very handsomely. Now he's doing broadcast on Golf Channel, but he's that's a perfect example. Even caddy. He's a great caddy.
He's a great caddy, top 1%, and I don't care whether you're the top 1% of bricklayers, you're going to get paid.
Absolutely.
What about, now we're moving into our 30s, though, and maybe we've just gotten married and we started to have a little bit of family. And that opportunity of freedom to go after the new venture, maybe to become an entrepreneur, maybe to take a step backwards on the base salary and trade some base for upside commission down the road. What would you say to that person now?
The same thing, really. I mean, it's your skill set is really going to determine where you go. If you're not working relentlessly on growing your skill set, then you're not going to grow your income. You're just not going to. And that's where most people falter. I see that happening in my business. I've got guys that make $200,000 or $300,000 a year. They stop growing and their income just flattens out and they don't really grow because they're not growing themselves. That they, if somebody could make $200,000 or $300,000 a year, they can make $1 million or $2 million a year, but not unless they keep growing. That's where I see most people faltering, is they plateau out on the personal growth that they should be working on.
But Hector, it's changed. I mean, let's be straight about it. When you were listening to Zig and Jim Rohn, and I was listening to Zig and Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Tom Hopkins, and then just sucking up that information, it was difficult for us to get our hands on it. We had to go find it. Today, all of that stuff is almost like entertainment.
It's free.
And so it's free.
It's free. I mean, you go on YouTube. You could look at all the stuff that we used to. I tell people all the time, I probably have invested well over $150,000 in personal development in my career, and seminars, books, tapes, audio programs. I mean, I spent a lot of money on that, but the payoff has been gigantic.
Yeah. The best ROI of any investment you ever made.
$150,000 I've ever spent. But most people, they won't even spend $20 on a book.
I used to go to this place called Half Price Books in Dallas.
Yeah.
And then from Half Price Books, I would go to the clearance rack at Half Price Books, and I would find all of the old cassettes from the motivational stuff, and it would be like 99 cents. You know, I mean, can you imagine you get Tom Tracy's Success Selling for 99 cents, and invariably, Hector, only the first tape was listened to.
Yeah.
None of the other tapes were listened to.
It's like only, I think it's less than 10% of the people that buy a book get past the first chapter. So, I listen to Tom. You're familiar with Tom. Tom's a very good friend of mine. We've done a lot of stuff together. And Tom, I was. He tells me I'm his most successful student he's ever had. But I listened to his How to Master the Art of Selling Anything. It's 12 audio cassette. I listened to that literally at least 2 hours a day, at least 5 days a week for 3 straight years. I didn't listen to the radio. I didn't listen to anything else. I only listened to that, and that's what allowed my sales skill set to get to where it is now. And that's no very few people would do that. In fact, I've never had. I tell everybody that's interested how I did that. I've never had one person even come remotely close to doing that. But what happened is I got to the point where my self-confidence and my ability to close and ask questions and all that got to such a high level. Building my business was actually really easy. It was never difficult for me. because I had a skill set that allowed me to recruit people, train people, develop people, close transactions. It was never difficult for me, but it was because I did the work to get to that level, to get to a mastery level of sales. And I think that's what people need to do. If I tell people all the time, the number one thing I would do if I were you, no matter what business you're in, is become a professional salesperson, because then everything else gets much easier.
Yeah. Let's take it to the hard part of the money game, though, Hector. Guy or gal is in their 50s. The kids are finishing up college. They still have debt on the house. They helped with the kids with college tuition, so they're behind financially on their retirement. They're keeping their fingers crossed that they're not going to get the pink slip at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that guy make up the gap? How does he fix it?
He needs to start his own business. He needs to start a second business on the side. That's what he needs to do. I mean, he may not like to hear that, but praying that things are going to work out is not a good strategy. He's going to need to do something. He's going to get out of his comfort zone and make some stuff happen, or he's going to suffer the consequences of not doing that down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the older you get, the less energy you have, the more difficult it becomes. Every day we're getting older. Every day energy is dissipating. You've got a problem. If you're going to make it happen, you need to make it happen right now. You need to get going.
See, that's why I'm so fortunate and blessed to be having this conversation with you, because you just said something in a way that most people would never say it. You said in the nicest way, or he will suffer the consequences.
Right. He will.
And I'm telling you, that is one of the key components of your personality that drew me to you early on. Was, did that guy just slap me in the face and do it nicely? Yeah, he just did. And that's exactly what you just did again. Because for me, I might be, fire and brimstone telling somebody that, but you just told the guy the truth in a way that even me, after hearing it so many times, says, "Ooh, yeah, suffer the consequences." Whoa, I don't want to suffer the consequences, right? I better get after it.
Those are your choices. You either get good or you get gone. I mean, that's how it works. I mean, there's no in between.
It is, man. I mean, experts get paid, amateurs get crushed.
Yeah. Well, I always say that pros get paid, amateurs get exercise.
Well, Hector, again, I know I started a little sappy on this, but I mean it. I am a blessed man to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And I do not believe that it is for anything other than the fact that action, intention, karmic energy, all of that sort of stuff created the connection, and I'm grateful for it. Yeah. So thanks for being on the show.
I'm so glad you reached out. I look forward to developing our relationship as time goes by. You're doing good work, bud. Just keep up. Man. I follow you on Twitter, and the stuff you're putting out is excellent.
It's a lot of work, I mean, we're pushing hard. We're pushing hard to just stay in the game, man.
Always getting better, always looking for an edge. That's what winners do, right? You're always looking. Tom Brady, he's ancient in football and still killing it because he's just always looking for the edge. I mean, that's what winners do.
Yeah. Also, one other thing, I think it's a massive takeaway for the audience is, though, this difference between entertainment and actually the action piece. And I know you're maniacal about the connecting of those two, right? But boy, do a lot of people still use it as entertainment. It's almost like going to conferences and things like that. In fact, I was at one recently with a friend of mine, and the conference ended at 3:00, and I left just before lunch. He said, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I don't need to hear it anymore. I need to put it into place this afternoon. I've heard enough, right? I'm ready. I'm good on this stuff."
Well, the difference is you're already motivated. Most people, are looking for motivation, but and again, it comes back to, I really believe the biggest problem for most people is they don't really know crystal clear what they want, and you need to figure that out, because if you don't, any little thing will knock you off track.
I think that's a great finish, because I actually wrote down a quote before the show of yours: "Clarity equals discipline."
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Without it, how do you have the power to get up every day and be disciplined about it? Discipline's hard. It is a trained skill, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. But you won't have it unless you know exactly what you want, though. That's the big takeaway from that, I think.
Yeah, my son told me last night, my 16-year-old told me that after college he would like to be a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting comment on him. And as his parent, I have 3 boys, as you know. I wasn't exactly sure what to say. Was I going to go into the dissertation of how difficult it is to be a Navy SEAL and how much away from your family you are and that you could get killed, or should I just support, which I did, and say I'm so proud of you for having that clarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
I that's what I would do. Exactly.
So Hector, thanks again. It's a pleasure. One of the highlights of my life.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
I'll see you down the road.
Amazing new year.
Thank you. Same to you.